Good morning. I'm Pierre BIM consultant at BIM Initiative, and been privileged to be invited to the talk for the BIM Coordinator Summit 2024. And the topic we're going to address today is about performance measurement. The question is, from a background of practicing as an architect, being a BIM coordinator, BIM manager, BIM consultant, involved in construction and design, the importance is to measure performance. Why? Because it's business. Construction is simply a complex set of tasks that need to be delivered. There's buildings, infrastructure, places to live, and ultimately the performance is a requisite. One of the issues that we do have is that we don't share enough information about performance within the community of professionals, within the BIM community, and within the client and project team community. Why is that? Some of the reasons is non-disclosure, intellectual property, and we would immensely benefit from being able to share some of that experience. So part of what we're going to present today will deal with how can we share it, how can we benefit from it, and what is some of the better methods to consider it. Coming from a design background, there are a couple of quotes that we've been given over a period of time. One of the things is good design takes time. The number of times that actually becomes an issue is probably all too often in the projects. A good design takes time, and yes, even for the engineers. Don't sweat the small things. One, because it's going to affect performance. No, the detail is what counts. Just do it right. Don't do any more than you need to. Work smarter, not harder. And I say, yeah, right, that's not likely. And it's probably quite true. However, there is one quote about all of these, and that is sharing. Collaboration is key to the design. Double meaning within performance matters. Is it performance matters, or are there performance matters, items and issues that actually affect performance? So what do we require when we do performance? We need a benchmark. That's the departure point. We need to know the expectations and clear up the guff, because sometimes we have muddied water, too many opinions, too many decisions, and none of them really founded. We need a program, and it has to be inclusive. That is probably the key important part to performance, is about inclusivity. And then finally, we will go with actual resources and effort. Ultimately, all of those things, the benchmark, the departure point, all the expectations, rely on historical data. And for all of us, that's an invaluable investment. Spoke earlier there about collaboration, and that's probably got the biggest influence on performance. We need to make sure, one, that we retain ownership for the author. We share with the team. So within the collaboration, that sharing is really important. Input and engagement. We said about the ownership, so there is one owner. They share and then engage with the rest of the team. The graphic gives us an opportunity to see it's a centrally focused BIM. The information modeling, the information model, the data is all shared. Every single one of the people or parties that you see on the outside are owners in their own particular area. Once we share, we can then exchange that information from design across to building to realizing the projects that we have. We need team members to have informed decisions. The benefit of being informed is that there is a single point to query, because we've got ownership. Individuals know where to go and who they're dealing with. Important part about the collaboration is that we need to have it where all information, all data is accessible. And it should be accessible anywhere, on different devices, on different platforms, but for the project, in a place where everyone can get hold of that. Pardon me. On demand is really important as a measure of performance, because everybody has, and in particular some past experience, on a global platform, is you have people in different time zones, in different backgrounds across the world, and on demand is then a very relative term, especially trying to keep it updated. But on demand is really important in the new performance mind. The performance measure is part of that investment. This is something that, from a design point of view, we invest in every single project back into the practice, back into how we work. So the key issue here is historical data. We can't compare, we can't start a benchmark, we can't do anything without having some historical data, maybe timesheets, maybe any one of the measures that we need to apply. Part of that investment is we need to be able to review, analyze, and assess the various parts of our project and interpret changes. Now, the historical data, any of that interpretation requires a couple of constraints. One of them is project type. Every single one of the different project types has an influence on what changes are significant and will have an impact on design. Again, part of those measurements in that investment is producing analysis of the changes and the differences between the estimate and the actuals. In past experience, that's probably one of the most difficult ones. From a project management point of view, is working with a fixed price where the estimates might not have drawn on the benefit of the historical data. Then the actuals is usually a bit of a niggle every week, putting in timesheets on a Monday. So what we do need to do is we need to find ways that we can update the performance and keep it current, live. The question about this is, how do we do that? Well, one of the most important parts that has come out on past experience and recent experience was the capture of lessons learned. And the one problem in projects is that there's never time to run through and capture the lessons learned. That's part of the historical data. The historical data gives us an opportunity to take those lessons that are learned and hopefully not replicate them in the next project. If we're doing that, we're not learning. The other part about lessons learned is that we need to open up communication between executives, design management, leads, the BIM team, coordinators, managers, and the users, the designers. By opening the communications, lessons learned using a suitable platform, and there are many developments that are taking place on that point internally and as application, is opening up that communication, getting people to talk about what they've seen, what their experiences are. The other part about the investment is finally keeping data up to date. And we're working in a digital world, so the transformation is we need to make sure that we can extract data, keep it updated, make it current. And in my opinion, for a small effort, there is a big benefit. You'll hear the term, use the knowledge. The knowledge is the investment. Part of the knowledge requires all of these components to be considered. People plus process plus technology. The people own capitals. And the reason behind that is the real value. People contribute, work, collaborate, coordinate, integrate. Depending on our management style, that can make an enormous difference to any project. What we do is we need to base all of those people's tasks, actions, engagements on a process. The process gives us confidence. And out of the confidence comes what I call the comfort zone. And when people are comfortable, they engage. Really important for performance is that engagement. It's like the water cooler event where people exchange information on a less formal basis and the immeasurable value that that has, in my experience. The next step is technology. It's all in lowercase. Now, there's a couple of technophiles who will tell me it should actually be more important, but it's an enabler. Part of the design, part of the engineering, part of putting buildings together is to use the technology. And we have some really, really interesting and challenging times with artificial intelligence. and the use of artificial intelligence to remove the routine tasks that we have and free us up to do the more important things. The knowledge also includes resources. What do we know about the resource? It's libraries, it's data sources, it's the web. What we need is an inventory. We need to understand what we have. In terms of performance, the better your library, the better the resources, the quicker you can find things. And you can say, Google, tell me about something, or Copilot, if you're doing AI. At the bottom of that is the lessons learned. Once again, repeat, it is the knowledge. And the lessons that we learn, we pass on to everybody. An example taken from a past experience was a project. Now, because of non-disclosure, we can't release the information about the project. But the really important part about the project is we need to bundle them according to project types, the scale and the complexity, and also consider things like contractual issues. The McLeamy curve popped out. It's been used many, many times. What I thought was important was to go and take an overlay and analyze some aspects, interpret the information that we received on the project. And out of that, these are some of the findings that we have. Firstly, in terms of the effort and the resources, the CAD programs generated the white curve. It started at 0, 0. In other words, no effort and no resources. Not quite true, because we have libraries, we have the ability to drop information in and start the project. What's really important is the dotted lines indicate a 15, 30, 60, and 100% timeline of deliverables for the project. In this period, it was a very important project. The type it was to package a set of documents and a model for another consultant to pick up, contextualize, and place somewhere in a particular site. At the 15%, the blue area, one of the things that we know about the BIM process is that we don't start on 0, 0, because from day one, we already have information, we already have resources, we already have a capability within a matter of minutes to actually have a project running. At the point we start with information going in, the blue area is an interesting model because this is where we've got early expense in the project. It's much steeper than the CAD curve. And at the same time, we measured at the 15% fee stage that there was between 30 and 38% of the fees expended. Now, how do you go to the client and debate that? And this is where the performance comes in, is looking at the contractual parts of how can we impact the performance with early understanding. One other takeaway at that point was, how can we keep a client happy? What we would do in terms of design is share information, appropriate information, not more than what's required, but engaging that client. As we move through the project, the second red squiggle says, at that point, the 30% point, we've actually expended 60% of the effort. Now, remember, this was a delivery project rather than purely a design project. But that's quite significant because at the point on the CAD curve was usually significantly above that. You see there are two very important arrows. And the first one is the arrow that gives us data. Now, the focus is in the BIM world is data. In this particular project, the data was sparse, but there was enough to be able to document and deliver for procurement, costing estimates, etc. The geometry was quite light, and that, at the end of the day, is the production engine. The production was good because the BIM process on Revit allowed delivery of a large number of documents. At that point, documents were the way of putting things. It wasn't just the sharing of the model. How did we achieve that? And that's the performance is an interesting approach. At the time, the big room had been a term bandied around, and we established a BIM team in the big room. But the real driver was breaking up the team, mixing the discipline, opening communication, and at the end of the day, strengthening that with the engagement of the project manager and the various parties that typically were not included unless it was a 2-weekly progress meeting. And we went through the daily progress sessions. One caveat in the project was there were 16 people in the project team at the initial part. Only 4 had Revit knowledge. And that was a big shock in terms of being able to upgrade and upskill people at the same time as trying to produce production documents. The knowledge, however, is the part that is really important in this case. If we start with more knowledge at the knowledge base and we enhance that as part of our investment, that gives us a major improvement with our future projects. The next part was making changes and dealing with people. And that was an exemplary way, I think, in that experience. Part of the exercise that we have is looking at that resource. The example being is that rooms and spaces, a container file, has the ability to contain enormous amounts of information, reducing the input requirements. That container file is a separate file, including schedules, including data reporting mechanism, which when imported into the project contains performance information, and the rooms and spaces then are able to be guiding us, giving us the opportunity and the ability to influence the way that we're designing, monitor what we're doing, and at the end of the day, informing us with every single project based on the contents for the room on the project type. And ultimately, the rooms and spaces, the contents, are not just the container and the building, but those things that need to be procured and assembled and checked for their quality. The next part about performance is probably the most important, is that when we communicate and we use visuals, we get better performance. In this particular case, project changes in the model are typically only reviewed in the CDE using a compare function. But in this particular case, enormous number of changes on a bespoke building by adding some parameters, adding a schedule, and then applying view templates. The colors tell us something. We can see the results of change, whether it was client-led change, design-led change, or code-led change. And the results means we have more people that are informed. We should, therefore, as part of the wrap-up, use the knowledge. That knowledge is an investment that we've made. If we top it up continually, that knowledge will assist us. And hopefully, if we can share that, some of that knowledge, without losing some of our market benefit, it can have an enormous impact on the industry as a whole. Remembering constantly that it's people plus process plus technology. I'd like to thank everybody for the time that they've spent with us, but I think that it's important that we should not forget that we have a lot of fun and there must be some joy. One of the things is creating. We're putting buildings, places for people. We're using technology and various different opportunities for construction. And from my point of view, we're looking at the craft, the knowledge of building, and how that gives us a massive sense of wealth. In this particular case, we need to try, look and see. And one aspect about look is that not many people will look, but they do not see. In this particular case, it is important that we do that. The image on the right is about the technology that's enabled us to make this work. Thank you.